Welcome, Bronco Nation, my game review for Boise State versus Nevada, and welcome into the Horseshoe Spirits Studios. Make sure that you grab yourself a bottle of Horseshoe Spirits liquor at any liquor store in the southwest of Idaho. Now, I have a lot of viewers I know that don't live in Idaho. Boise State, Bronco Nation is spread all across the country. Huge national fan base, national footprint. Part of what makes Boise State so great is their national brand. I know many of you don't have the opportunity, at least every year, to go into Idaho and grab yourself a bottle of Horseshoe Spirits. Well, thankfully, there is now a solution for you. There is a website that has been launched where you can purchase and have these shipped directly to your door, www.horseshoespirits.com. And the great news is that if you buy 6 bottles, you get shipping completely free. And if you buy half that many, shipping is 50% off, okay? Great deal. Great liquor. Multiple selections. Make sure you check out the link. I'll put a link in the description. Now, if you live in Boise, of course, then you can just go to any liquor store and ask for it. If they don't have it, ask for it by name, and they will get it in for you. Great liquor to have at any tailgate or watch party where you're watching a win or a loss, or a win that feels like a loss, like a little bit does tonight. It's a great liquor to have by your side to celebrate or to get you through it. And I am sure that I think most of us would say it would have been great to have some of this with us while watching the game. I actually was tempted to drink during the game myself, and I don't, because I do enjoy Horseshoe Spirits liquor, but not during the games, because I want to make sure that in my game reviews I am as rational and analytical and logical as I can be, and not blurred by any effects of alcohol whatsoever. That's just my personal commitment to try and keep myself as focused as I can for my game reviews. But if I was ever tempted to, it was this one, as Boise State walked away, stumbled, crawled, tripped away from a 24-3 win versus Nevada. Before I go any further, my last review, which I thought was 95+% positive, I was thrilled by the victory versus UNLV. I had somebody comment that my review was too negative. If you thought my review of last week's game was too negative, you need to plug your ears, take some extra heart medication, maybe just turn off the video, because you are not ready for this review today. People say that a win is a win, right? I don't agree with that. I do not agree with that. I think a win is a win if you are set up in a context and circumstance where wins are what you need to build your program forward to the success at the end of the season. That's not where Boise State is right now, okay? When you are set up for a playoff game where you are just looking to escape with a winning record, okay? Where you're looking to escape like last year, okay? You've lost barely to Oregon, which is really that loss, which people say, there's no victories and losses. That was a huge victory in that loss. It set Boise State up for the rest of the season. It kept Oregon highly ranked, and it allowed Boise State to ride their coattails with the other winning record that they had all the way to the CFP. That's not the case this year. Boise State has a major loss to USF, and they have obviously a loss to Notre Dame. They have no quality wins on their record. They theoretically could still get into the CFP, but that's not the number one goal of this program. Right now, the number one goal of this program, obviously besides building and getting to the Mountain West Championship game, is building this program. This is a rebuild year. This is a team that is looking to rebuild their culture after everything that Andy Avalos did to this program, okay? This is a team that is looking to try and build itself for 2026. Come out, finish with their last season in the Mountain West, get that Mountain West crown, and then build towards 2026 and everything that this program can be in the future starts this year. That's what this season is about, okay? CFP, distant goal, chaos has to happen. Theoretically, they could still be in it. They're in the conversation right now. People are talking about them, but a lot of things have to happen for them to have a chance. But what this program needs to do right now is build their culture. And tonight, this win did not build this culture. This was the most disappointed I have ever been in a Boise State team after a win that I can remember in school history. There have been close wins, obviously, when Boise State beat BYU 7-6, but even that felt like a really good game overall, and things just didn't go their way, and they were able to walk away with a win because of the, Canadian bacon and pick 6. But that's not what this game was. Boise State did not win this game. Nevada lost this game 100%. Nevada controlled the outcome of this matchup from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, and the reason that they did that is because Boise State let them. Boise State could have rolled in and destroyed Nevada like they should have. Like they should have come in the last time they have to play this trash program. They should have come in and left on a high note, leaving no doubt that Boise State, that this is not a true rivalry in the sense that these teams are in any way competitive, that is an emotive rivalry only, and left this on a high note and moved on through in the rest of their schedule. And they didn't do that. They came in, they played it safe, they played it conservative, they had the most boring, vanilla, conservative, unimaginative play calling that I have ever seen from Boise State teams since maybe the UTEP game when we lost. Luckily, we walked away with a win in this one because Nevada gave them that win. Nevada absolutely lost this game. 2 major penalties at the goal line that allowed Boise State additional opportunities to score 2 touchdowns that were either looking to become field goals potentially or turned away at the goal line. Nevada, 3 interceptions in this game. Terrible, terrible game by their freshman quarterback, allowing Boise State's defense that could not tackle to save their lives the opportunity to make up for major mistakes and come back and win this game. This was not a win. This was a Nevada loss. And when you're talking about building a program, when you're talking about building a culture, this is not something that you can build a culture on. I have not felt more demoralized about the future of this team at any point, even after USF, okay, than I have after this game. This was a Boise State. This is not how Boise State teams come into games. Sometimes you may come in and you overlook. You didn't realize that that quarterback was going to be as good as they were. And their backup was playing and you weren't ready for them on tape. And they surprise you defensively. And you come in with maybe a little overconfidence as a team and you have to recover from that. That's fine. That happens to everybody. Everybody overlooks games. But when you have an offensive coordinator who has the capabilities that he does, who just showed us versus UNLV, that was the best game offensively play calling wise that I'd seen in a while for Boise State. Even going back a couple of years, that was a brilliant play calling game versus UNLV. I know they're a terrible defense, but it was a brilliant play calling that also exposed that terrible defense by Nate Potter. That is not what we saw tonight. What we saw tonight was Boise State run the ball essentially up the middle, which I know is not a technical term because it's always off left or right tackle, but off the center of the offensive line. Pretty much every single snap. Boise State ran the ball 47 times in this game, and they averaged 2.9 yards per carry. They knew that I knew, I'm sure Boise State should have known that Nevada was going to crowd the line of scrimmage and force Boise State to be creative. And their response to that was to pound it up the middle, get time after time. I stopped keeping track. At one point, I was writing them down because I thought it was going to be a major talking point. And I didn't need to because it ended up being every single run. There were a couple runs outside. Guess what? All of them were for significant yardage. Outside of that, almost every single run, every single play call, they threw the ball 28 times. Almost every single play call was a run up the middle. This was an abysmal performance by this Boise State program, primarily because the coaching staff, I don't blame the players for this one, because the coaching staff came in, looked at a 1-6 program and thought that they could waltz into a 1-6 program, hide their cards for the big game versus Fresno State next week, treat this like an FCS team, and do what they want to and walk away with a win. That is not how you build a culture. That is not how you build the Boise State teams of the golden era. The Kellen Moore teams didn't overlook programs. They didn't come into teams and say, well, we have a bigger game next week, so we're not going to put our best cards on the table in this matchup. They came in and they played their best every single game. Sometimes they faced teams that were also giving them their best, and occasionally they lost 3 times. But they came out and gave their best effort. If this was a game that Boise State had come down against Nevada and played tight all the way back and forth and given their best shot and Nevada had stood up, Nevada came to play, okay? Nevada came to play in this one. They came in with a very, very aggressive, creative offensive scheme, and their defense really, really came against Boise State's offense. But Boise State did not show Nevada anything that any very, very basically minded defensive coordinator could not have stopped in this game. Other than one of the last drives of the game when they finally pulled out one trick play. I'm not even asking for trick plays. Where were the jet sweeps? Where were the incredible, creative, multiple directional plays that Boise State has been running recently? Where were the runs to the outside? Where was anything that we have seen Boise State do in any sense creatively? This is like when you're playing your cousin that just plays like 5 plays over and over and over again, goes no huddle and plays the 5 same plays over and over again against you. This is what that felt like in this game. And if Nevada had not absolutely shot themselves in the foot by muffing a punt, by 2 terrible penalties, by 3 interceptions, by a couple of offensive holding calls on their end that backed them up and put them out of range, by a terrible attempt at a field goal, Boise State won this game 24-3, and that included one last, go down, grind the clock out drive and put this game away. But this really was a game that Nevada controlled from beginning until the last 8 minutes of the game. Nevada controlled the outcome of this game, and they lost it. They lost the game because they're terrible. This is one of the worst Nevada teams I've ever seen. Nevada's had some really, really bad teams, but this is one of the worst Nevada teams that I have ever seen. And that is why Boise State won this game, because they came in expecting to just be able to do whatever they wanted to do, to come in and grind it out against Nevada and basically think our guys are going to be stronger than yours, and eventually you're going to break and we're just going to run right through you. We won't have to expose any plays versus Fresno State. It is the only explainable outcome for what we saw tonight. The other potential possibilities are far worse, and I would rather think that Nate Potter was trying to keep some cards close to the chest in this one, and that is why we came in with the offensive scheme for both halves with almost no adjustments that we saw in this game. And that's what I want to think. And I think that's the most likely explanation. But it's not a valid explanation. This isn't San Jose State. This isn't some other Mountain West team. This is Nevada. This is the last time that we played them, and it's the commemoration game. You have Doug on the back of your helmets. This is the do it for Doug game, as I was saying. There should be some fire in this program. There should be some passion coming in to come out and leave no doubt that this Boise State team does not deserve to be uttered in the same breath as any Nevada program. And that's what this game should have been. This was a rival. You can come out against Eastern Washington and run that offense. You cannot come out against a rival who is taking this series, who has aligned their entire season around this game, has set it up on a Friday, on a night game, to match what happened in 2010, who is honoring their 2010 class, who has Colin Kaepernick on the sideline, who is taking this game more seriously than any other matchup on their entire schedule, who built their entire schedule the offense that we saw today for Nevada, they didn't run that against any other teams. They saved everything for this matchup because that's what this is to them. I know a lot of Boise State fans don't consider this a true rivalry. Nevada does. They have defined their entire program off of trying to beat Boise State, and the one time that they significantly did. I know that they beat them again in 2021, but that's different. That 2010 team was different, and that is the entire purpose of the Nevada program, is the fact that they beat Boise State one time. That's why it's played every single time Boise State plays them. Even if they're up by 45 points, they'll play the highlights from that game. And that gives Nevada some hope that they could maybe do it again. That is the entire purpose of their program, and they came out to play and to try and do it one last time. And Boise State walked in like this was some other 1-6 generic Mountain West team that they didn't have to respect, that they didn't need to give their best effort to, and that they had nothing to prove against. Like the history and everything else that has happened, they had nothing to play for in this game. And it showed on the field. This is the most disappointing performance I have ever seen by a Boise State team in a win. Of course, there's a lot of losses that would come into this that are way worse. But in a win, in maybe my entire my entire life watching Boise State football as a Boise State fan, I cannot, and I know, I said at the beginning that I don't drink because I want to be rational and logical. My purpose in my review videos is to be as logical and rational and facts-based and as minimally emotional as possible. I know that I'm failing. I know that I'm failing on that right now because I am emotional in this one. This game meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to a lot of other fans. It meant a lot coming into this game regardless. After what happened this week, this game meant a lot more. And the fact that it didn't seem to mean a lot more after what happened this week to these coaches and to these players, I don't even have words for that. I don't even know how to begin to describe my feelings and disappointment for that. This was not the performance that Boise State needed to or could deservedly in any way could explain to put on this field tonight. Offensively for Boise State, 308 yards. Total, 174 yards passing, 135 yards rushing. Maddox Madsen had the worst game of his entire career tonight. I mean, statistically, he may have had worse, but tonight, overall, this was his worst game. 15 out of 28, 174, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. He needed to prove himself again in this matchup. He's needed to prove himself every single game this season based on after what we saw versus Nevada and after we had seen coming into that game. He'd had a couple of big games against weak opponents, but nothing to prove he could win in a major matchup. Nevada lined up saying, beat us through the air, and Boise State was unable to do that. Maddox Madsen got bailed out by some incredible catches. Absolutely incredible catches. At one point in the first half, he was completing 44% of his passes. If not for two incredible passes, that number would have been closer to 30%. Maddox Madsen threw a ball into double coverage, underthrew the ball, was supposed to be picked, was in the hands of the defender, and Cam Bates, who has just exploded this season, I've been so impressed with him, came up over the defender and took the ball away for a 37-yard grab. Second game in a row that Maddox Madsen has egregiously underthrown Cam Bates on what should be a deep touchdown pass. Any other quarterback, really in Boise State history right now, Cam Bates would be in those historic highlight videos with these long 60-yard touchdowns. Twice now, in back-to-back games, Maddox Madsen has egregiously underthrown Cam Bates. And then on that same drive, throws a pass that is late out, gets deflected by the defender, and Chase Penry makes an incredible job. He's stepping up in replacement of Ben Ford. Makes an incredible catch on his hip, on the deflection. So hard to readjust yourself and catch all the deflection. Incredible catch. First down, about 13 yards. Maddox Madsen had 174 yards passing, and right there, that's 50 yards of his passing. And out of his 15, he had 15 completions. That's 2 of his completions out of his 15 and 50 passing that were absolutely saved by wide receivers. Now, on the other side of things, Maddox Madsen was the only one who had a terrible game. The wide receivers also, as a core, had a bad game in this one as well. Chris Marshall had 2 really bad drops, so those go against Maddox Madsen's numbers, but they weren't on him. The wide receiver was wide open here in Chris Marshall. He's gotten over it, but not today. Again, the whole team seemed to be completely unfocused. And I put that on the coaching staff, not putting the right amount of preparation and focus. This should be the game. This should be the game where you go out and you prove it. Not for this team, but for every other team that came before you. The history, the legacy of this program. This game should have meant something. And it didn't seem to mean anything to anybody on that field except on the Nevada sideline. I think it meant something to Choate, and it meant something to the players on the other sideline. Choate Choate had some incredible comments about Doug Martin and coaching Doug Martin and that 2010 team and being part of that. I got some hair or something. He had some incredible comments. Choate knew how important his game was. He really, really did. And I think he prepared for it. I know he's coaching Nevada, but I think he's, in his mind, he's coaching for it like he's in that Boise State team trying to come back out and have a chance to win in this environment. And he knew how important this game was. That's part of the reason. I mean, this was a big game for Nevada anyway, but part of the reason that Nevada played so well was because Choate had them ready. Boise State's coaching staff did not come out with that mentality, and it showed in the play calling, the way they set their players up, and then how the players executed as well. Not focused, not intentional, bad drops by Chris Marshall, by a couple other wide receivers as well. Boise State, true freshman, blanking on the name right now, had an opportunity on a quick slant pass. It was a good throw by Maddox Madsen. Again, one of those opportunities where it was a good pass and it was just dropped, just not even looking up for the ball. It was a really good play call. Boise State had been running up the middle over and over and over again. Instead, go for it, 3rd and 2. A short, quick pass ends up being a drop. That is what you saw today. Continual drops by the wide receivers. Terrible throws by Maddox Madsen. Doesn't mean there weren't good moments. Like I said, great catch by Bates. Caples was showing that he could be a capable, consistent receiver for Boise State. Penry had some nice catches. Louder finally back off of injury. There were good moments from this receiving core, and Maddox Madsen had some really good throws. Late in the game, he had a really nice throw to Penry. Off the fake from the running back, threw it off to the right side, over the top defender. It was a really nice throw. Maddox Madsen had some good throws, but zero consistency, and that was certainly not reflective overall of his game in this one, which was terrible. And I don't know if he's still dealing with an injury. I don't know if he's dealing with the pressure. I have no idea exactly what's going on, but this was not even the Maddox Madsen we saw last week versus UNLV. Something is going on right now with Maddox Madsen and his connection with these wide receivers. And I think probably some of it is he's still dealing with that injury, that stinger that he suffered early on versus Air Force. So that has got to be the explanation, because This is not the kind of game that Max Benson needed to have, and maybe it's the way the coaching staff's prepared him, but he should be playing every single game like he has something to prove, and that didn't necessarily seem to be the case in this game, and for the offense overall, it certainly was not the case. The Boise State running game did no better, I think mostly because of the play calling. Boise State ran the ball, like I said, 47 times, 2.9 yard average. The leading rusher in this game, Sire Gaines, 17 carries for 62 yards, 3.6 yard average, and a touchdown. Most of those yards coming on a couple nice runs to the outside where he was able to power through and make some good runs. When Boise State actually ran it to the outside, he had some good runs. Dylan Riley, I think maybe dealing a little banged up from his incredible performance last week, but only 12 carries for 34 yards, 2.8 yard carry, no huge explosive runs, 1 touchdown. That's it. Short yardage type situation. And then Malik Sherrard, 7 carries for 27 yards, 3.9 yard average. I don't really have anything else to say about this offense. Incredibly disappointing performance overall by this Boise State offense that, again, was bailed out time and time again by UNLV, and it was entirely on the offensive coordinator's fault. Max Benson had some bad moments, but wide receivers made up for them. They also dropped some bad throws, but overall, the offense was not put in a position to succeed in this game. The offense was not put in a position to succeed in this game by Nate Potter, by this coaching staff, who clearly came into this game thinking that they could just run it on Nevada and leave without exposing the playbook versus Fresno State. Most quintessentially by the fact that on drive number 2, when they finally found a way to get down into the red zone, they had a couple of good throws, some makeup catches by Marshall on some drops, a good outside run by Gaines, finally gotten themselves down into the red zone from the 5. 3 straight runs right up the middle. 3 straight runs right up the middle into the teeth of the defense. They know exactly what is happening, and they're unable to go in and score a touchdown. A field goal. You're at the 5-yard line, and it ends up with a field goal. Drive number 5 for Boise State. Drive number 5 for Boise State. They're doing the exact same thing again. They are running it up the middle over and over again. They're stopped. 3rd down, they're stopped. But unfortunately for Nevada, they have an unsportsmanlike conduct. They drag down Gaines way after the play. They get another opportunity. They score a touchdown. But it wasn't Boise State who scored that touchdown. That was Nevada for giving them that opportunity. Boise State, no creativity. Nothing in that first half. Second half, okay, Boise State's learned their lesson. Nevada's come to play. They need to turn this around. Nope. Second half, exact same thing. Drive number 2, Boise State gets it down to the 1-yard line through no fault of their own. Nevada muffs a punt. Boise State has to punt the ball. They muff a punt at the 5-yard line. Boise State set up at the 5. 3 straight runs up the middle. Stopped cold. Nevada offsides on the last 3rd down. Boise State another opportunity, runs it in for a touchdown. Boise State didn't score that touchdown. Nevada gave up Boise State the opportunity to score a touchdown by both fumbling the ball at the 5 and then allowing them to run the ball in. Otherwise, this game plan would have lost Boise State the game, and there were no adjustments made. 0 adjustments made from a coaching staff that has shown a great ability to make adjustments. They saw you come out of the first half, you come out with this idea that you can just run over Nevada. This game means nothing, that you have nothing to prove, and you don't need to do anything for the legacy of this program from the past. You make that executive decision, fine. And then you come out, but you run through the first half, and you're only up 10-3. And you're lucky to be up 10-3 after 2 terrible throws that are caught by the receivers anyway, and you're able to score a touchdown. Okay, we need to make some adjustments in the second half. We need to do something different than what we have been doing drive after drive after drive. Nope, that's not the action. That's not the reaction. Let's come out in the second half and do the exact same thing. Boise State in this game had 96 yards passing in the first half, total for 174, so about the same amount of passing. 73 yards rushing in the first half, 135 total, so again, about the same amount of rushing in the second half. They came out and ran, except for really one drive, and really it was just one play. Pretty much the exact same non-functional offense that they ran in the first half, they did in the second half, and they got away with it. That is the worst thing out of all of this. The worst thing out of all of this, I don't want Boise State to lose, But they got away with it and beat the spread. They got away with it and get to feel like they did something in this game. They did nothing in this game. This was an absolute loss except for one variable, which was Nevada, who lost this game for themselves. Boise State did nothing offensively. We're going to talk about the defense in a moment. But they did nothing offensively to win this game. They did not deserve in any way to win this game offensively. And yet they did. And that is a terrible lesson to learn. I hope that when the Boise State coaches review this tape, there is a come to Jesus moment, to quote Spencer Danielson there, a come to Jesus moment to resurrect this program and put them back on the track that they need to go, which is a program that prepares for everyone at the same level. Prepares for every team like they are the same level as the team they're going to play the next week. How can you preach that and play, and not play, but call a game like this versus Nevada? It is inexcusable, completely inexcusable. And Boise State walks away with a win. Last drive for Boise State, it's a good one. You know, they're finally throwing the ball around. They throw a flea flicker, which is a really brilliantly designed play. It shows that Potter can do it. He didn't miss the bus. He was there at the game by all accounts, and it shows here in drive number 4 of the second half. Flea flicker. It was a brilliant design for flea flicker. They fake the end around to Bates, who then tosses it back to, I forget which wide receiver or running back was coming back from the right side, who then tosses it back to Matson, who then throws it to a wide open Louder. It was only about a 12-yard gain, but it looked really good, and it was an easy throw and catch. That was brilliant. I'm not saying that you need to come out and every single play needs to be some kind of trick play, but some form of quick passing game and creativity in this one. Nevada was clearly vulnerable against the pass. The pass early on for Boise State was really working well, especially the quick slants. And instead of working off of that, Boise State comes out drive after drive after drive and runs it up the middle. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but that's what Boise State did the entire game, so we might as well talk about it. So overall, offensively in this game, I could not be more disappointed with the style and decision-making of the offensive coordinator staff in this game, of the playmaking, not just by Max Matson, but by the entirety of this team. The offensive line, they did not do a good job of stopping Nevada, but they also didn't have a ton of penalties and mistakes like we've seen in the past. As far as I can tell, I haven't gone back and been able to watch that specific highlight again. There was a fumble at the goal line by Sire Gaines, and it looked like Metoyer was able to pick it up, the fumble, and Boise State then kicked the field goal. Now, I haven't confirmed exactly if it was him, but if it was, that's fantastic because he has not had a great season so far, and it's an awesome redemptive moment for him. So the offensive line didn't do anything catastrophic, but they certainly didn't open up any holes, especially not in the middle, which is really not on them because in order for your offensive line to perform to their maximum capability, you have to do something to shift the defense. There's only so much you can do when you're beating your man in front of you, when you also have behind that man another linebacker and a safety coming into the same gap. There's only so much you can do. Boise State's offensive coordinator staff did nothing to help out this offensive line, this running game. This was not in, I don't put this performance on the offensive line. I thought overall he played well. Boise State only had 2 penalties. We talk about Nevada giving Boise State the win in this one. Boise State didn't shoot themselves in the foot in the penalty department, only 2 penalties for 10 yards. That's an incredible improvement overall for a Boise State team that has struggled with being consistent and also with not making those simple little mistakes, right? With being disciplined. They have struggled so much to be disciplined, and only 2 penalties in this game versus Nevada, 8 penalties for 72 yards, and most of those in big moments that either hurt their offense or gave Boise State opportunities that they did not deserve on their own offensive side of the field. So for overall for Boise State in this game, this was an F performance. This was the lowest grade you can give to an offense. This was the worst. And it wasn't necessarily the offensive performance, but the offensive play calling and plan, which then dictates the performance of offense. I have never, besides versus UTEP when we lost, never seen an offensive play calling that was so uncreative, unimaginative, and overlooked a team as much as what we saw on the field today. And Boise State better have the game of their life versus Fresno State. It better be the most explosive and creative offensive performance that we have seen in the history of the Blue to justify what we saw tonight. Because what we saw tonight was an offensive staff I could have called as good a game. Anybody could have called, as I called almost perfectly every single play what Boise State was going to do because it was so predictable. Another run up the middle. Here's another run up the middle. We'll probably pass around the middle of the field. Every single time. Oh, I was perfect. There was not a single time where I said we're running at the middle that we did not run at the middle. And you know how I know that is how predictable Boise State was? Because Choate stopped it because he knew what was going to be called on the other side. Everybody knew. Anybody watching knew what was going to be called for this Boise State offense. So, again, this was the worst performance I've ever seen. Bounce back opportunity on the blue against another rival, which hopefully the Boise State coaching staff will actually take seriously this time because they're actually good this year in Fresno State. Huge bounce back opportunity. Exciting opportunity for Boise State to prove themselves again. I don't think that this was reflective in any way of Nevada's defensive capabilities or Boise State's offensive capabilities. I'm not saying that at all. I think Max Madsen is certainly capable of better than the performance he showed tonight. He has shown that already. Our running backs are capable. Offensive line, all of them, our wide receivers, tight ends, all of them are capable of much more than they put on the field tonight, as is our offensive coordinator. I don't think Boise State's offensive coordinator came out and Nate Potter gave Boise State's offense an opportunity to do anything else than what we saw tonight. This I pin entirely on the offensive game plan because it was one that completely overlooked this Nevada team and said, we don't need to prepare for you because you're nothing. You're 1-6 and we don't care. And we're just going to do the same thing over and over again. And you're not going to be able to stop us. Well, Nevada did stop them. But luckily for Boise State, they also stopped themselves and they walk away with a win. Now, a big part of the reason that Boise State's able to walk away with a win in this one is because their defense. Their offense did nothing, but their defense played really, really well. And freshman quarterback who showed a lot of flash. I was really impressed in moments from Nevada's quarterback. Really, very, especially early in that game. So a lot of very, very quick passes. Was impressed overall. Choate's, he's not the offense play caller, but Choate's offense played a really, really strong offense too. The problem is that Nevada made a ton of mistakes. Starting off right off the bat, drive number 1, picked by McCoy. He's under pressure. Boise State didn't get to the quarterback a ton of times. Only I think 3 sacks in this game. But what they did do well was they did actually apply a lot of pressure to a true freshman quarterback. He's only 18 years old. A true freshman quarterback who had to make quick decisions. Sometimes he did, but a lot of times he made more mistakes than he did make things right. And overall, Boise State's defense was able to make up for errors with some great, incredible individual standout performances defensively, coming up with some big turnovers, starting off with the first drive and getting that interception. But what you saw for this Boise State team that is more troubling overall for this defense is that they could not tackle to save their lives. Again, and I think that when you see wide receivers that are dropping passes, when you see a quarterback who's consistently underthrowing or overthrowing, it was both. It was one or the other, but consistently missing open plays. When you see an offensive play calling that's as vanilla and unimaginative as we see, and then you see a defense that cannot tackle all of that, every single part of that points to a team that did not prepare for this game, that did not focus and did not prepare for this game like they should have. This looked like the opening game versus USF in some ways, specifically on defense. Now, Boise State got a lot more interceptions in this game, and the Nevada offense, which in themselves is terrible, made a lot more mistakes in this game than USF did and gave Boise State their opportunities. But overall, in moments, this defense looked like what it did versus USF. So many broken tackles. Pretty much every single significant run that Nevada had or reception was off of a broken tackle. Time after time, Nevada made big time. At the second drive, they break 3 tackles to make a 9-yard play. Should have been somewhere around a 3rd and medium. Ends up being a first down. Boise State missing sacks. Safety blitz off the edge. Benefield can't get it. Allows a 5-yard run. Allows a 3rd and short. Missed tackles on a screen. Allows the first. 17-yard quick pass amongst a bunch of defenders. Allows that first. Then they're rescued by holding. So drive number 4 here. They're rescued by a holding penalty. Nevada is driving down the field again. The game at this point is only 3-3. They're driving down the field. They have an opportunity, and then they have a holding penalty. Wipes out a long run with a bunch of broken tackles, kind of like the USF Byron Brown run. Breaks off, is able to bring that back. They end up in like a 1st and 18. They're not able to convert. They go for it on 4th down on a faked field goal. Boise State stops them, gains some momentum back, is able to come back. But that's the kind of thing that happened. Nevada would be making strides, and then they would either shoot themselves in the foot by having some kind of penalty that killed their drive, or they would make a terrible decision by throwing an interception. There was one pick that was just a brilliant play by Irby. What an incredible job at Jeremiah Irby this season, coming from at the beginning of the year when he was a true liability to coming to this point in the season where he is one of the best defenders on this team. This defense overall has made an incredible jump forward. They had fixed their tackling, which is now another deficiency, which I don't think is going to be reflective of how they play next week. I think that is an issue in how this team prepared this game. But overall, this defense has not carried forward the many issues that we saw through the first 3 weeks of this program. This has been an incredible jump forward, and a big part of that has been the step forward by the DBs, specifically here by Irby. Incredible. He had 2 interceptions. He better carry out the hammer versus Fresno State because he 100% deserves it. 2 great interceptions. The first one was incredible. One of the most incredible interceptions I've seen by a Boise State player since maybe J.L. Skinner had that pick, that second pick versus Wyoming, when we the interception, and then we threw an interception, and then they threw an interception. He had that great pick in the back of the end zone. This was probably one of the most impressive interceptions I've seen since then. It was amazing. He looked like a wide receiver out there. The ball is thrown. He's tracking it down like a wide receiver, deep, diving, makes the grab. It was amazing. Incredible interception by Irby. Besides that, that was really one of the only ones where it was really like an individual great play. Other than that, the interceptions were, and not that any interception is easy. I'm not saying that. I know everyone takes skill and talent is difficult, but when you talk about the spectrum of interceptions, almost every other one of them was a bad decision by the quarterback versus necessarily being just an incredible play by the defender. There were some really good moments. Irby had another great pick in the end zone to end a drive by Nevada, but it was an underthrown ball, and he was in great position coverage-wise. But just a ball that shouldn't have been thrown. 3 picks in this game, and also a fumble. That's the difference for Boise State defensively. And then you add on to that, of course, the multiple holding calls or other penalties by Nevada that killed their drives. It wasn't necessarily bend but don't break like we saw versus UNLV. Versus UNLV, Boise State had a lot of broken plays, but then they came up strong on those 3rd and 4th downs. And it was really just man-on-man playing well. In this case, Nevada, they came up strong on those 3rd and 4th downs, but most of the time it was Nevada making bad decisions. Throwing an interception into double coverage. Missing a wide-open player. Having a penalty. Taking a bad sack when there were opportunities to throw the ball. That is the kind of thing that happened in this game because it was a freshman quarterback. To Chander's credit, the defense, difference maker in this game, not the same as what we saw with the offense. Defense called a good game. They did exactly what they needed to do, exactly what I called for them to do in my preview. Brought a ton of pressure, made it incredibly challenging for this quarterback to make any decisions whatsoever. So I'm not saying that this is the same scale as what we saw for the offense. I'm just saying that it wasn't necessarily a dominant defensive effort that was entirely spurred on by just Boise State's defense manning up, having a great scheme, and shutting Nevada down. Nevada made a ton of mistakes that made up for other Boise State mistakes. And the point of these videos, I have been incredibly emotional in this video, and I'll entirely own up to that. But the point of these videos are not to just slam Boise State if they make mistakes. That's not the intent in these videos. The intent in these videos is to hold the team accountable and to identify issues that need to be corrected going forward. Identify great things as well that need to be celebrated, like we talk about McCoy and the great interceptions that he had, the DB stepping up overall. We talk about Bates having an incredible game. Identify good things that are good trend items that need to be recognized, but also at the same time, identify major mistakes, especially if those are mistakes that have been replicated throughout the entire season that need to be fixed if this team is not just going to do anything this year, but if they're going to grow as a program. When you talk about this being a rebuild year, it is so important to not just brush off the mistakes because you won, because that is how you end up with programs that have cultural deficiencies that end up losing the big games when they matter. The great Boise State teams built themselves on holding themselves to the highest standard, no matter what. No matter what, when I talk to the players that got to play with or under Chris Peterson, the number one thing they talk about is just the fact that he was an absolute perfectionist. You might go out there and think you had a great game. I remember talking with Ryan Dinwiddie about this. You go out and you think you've had a great game, but then he comes and he talks to you and he goes, hey, you really need to work on stuff. He said, what are you talking about? I just had an amazing game. That is the level of perfection and performance that this team needs to be holding themselves to. And I'm not saying they're not doing that. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes. But when you have a team that comes out and plays like this in a game that matters, that shouldn't sneak up on you. I called this as a trap game before the season even started. In my list, in my season preview, I said this is a trap game. This is a rivalry game. We might be overlooking it for Fresno State, but I'm sure the coaching staff won't. But they could, and they did. And they didn't just overlook it; they completely disregarded Nevada. When that happened, that has got to be called out because that is a major, major problem and a major issue of cultural deficiency in the program that must be fixed. We do not get back to the golden era of Boise State football if we do not start holding the team, if the team does not hold themselves, the fan base does not hold the team to the accountability level that the golden era programs did. They didn't just become that by mistake. They had a bunch of, in the statistical world of recruits, nobodies. No, most of those players, nobody else wanted them. And yet they became one of the best teams, not just in Boise State history, but in the history of college football. I mean, the 2009 and 2010 programs were two of the best teams in the entire history of college football. And they did that by focusing on the little errors, and the big errors too, but the little errors, holding themselves to a high standard and preparing for every single game like it was the most important game of the year. And that didn't happen tonight. That didn't happen tonight, and it needs to stop, and it needs to be fixed so Boise State can get back to that level. And that's what the purpose. My emotions are high because of everything that happened this week with Doug Martin and everything else, and what this game meant to me as a fan who grew up in that era and wanting to end on a high note. But it's also high because this was not an acceptable performance for a Boise State program that should hold themselves to so much of a higher standard than what we saw on the field tonight. So to kind of wrap up, because I'm going long, happens when I'm upset. Defensively for Boise State, not a terrible performance. I thought Chenander came out with a really, really good game plan. The second half was a really, really strong performance defensively. Some great adjustments overall. 107 yards passing in the first half, but only ended the game with 147. So, only 40 yards passing in the second half. That's a huge improvement for them. And they held them under their average of 159 yards, what Nevada was averaging coming in. 31 yards rushing in the first half. They had 100 yards overall, so they had about 69 yards rushing in the second half. A couple of those on the big broken plays that ended up being a turnover anyway, so Boise State made up for it. So Boise State did a great job of adjusting. They had some great individual effort that went out and made some big plays when they were making mistakes, those interceptions. But just like the offense, this was not a defense that prepared to the level they needed to. They did much better. They were the only thing, the only light really, besides the next unit, which is a little bit of a surprise, but the only real light overall that you could look to and say, this defense is winning this game and making a difference. Thank goodness for this defense to be a part of this program, to be a part of winning this game. Offense did nothing to win this game, but for the defense, outstanding job for them being a part of winning this game. So it's not an abysmal performance. It's not an F. Okay, it's not an F, but it's certainly not the best, and there are some things to be fixed, specifically the tackling and the short yardage defense for passing. I said that's exactly what Nevada's going to come out and do. They're not a deep yardage pass. The linebackers are going to be key. I had Notriani as a key player of the game because I said they're going to focus on that short, quick passing game, and they did. They did, and Boise State, for a large part of this game, great adjustments in the second half, but a large part of this game couldn't stop it. So not coming in with that understanding and that mentality and being ready for that, that's a deficiency. But overall, for this defense, some great individual efforts, some bad performances, but also overall were part of the main reason this team won. So I'm going to give them a B- overall. So an F-, abysmal, whatever you want to say, or plus, if plus is worse. The worst F grade you can give for the offense, B- for the defense. Special teams. Wow. This is really surprising. The special teams have had, last week they did have a big mistake, right? With the muff. But then they corrected themselves and had some really good plays in the second half. The special teams overall played really well in this game. They had a mistake. They had one punt that wasn't that great. It was about, it was like 30-something yard punt. It wasn't a great punt. They had a play where they could have downed the punt at the 2, and it bounced over the top of the offense, the coverage unit, even though Oscar Doyle did an incredible job of holding onto the ball in the rollout with his athleticism and the threat to run. They're ready. They got to stay back because they know we can throw too. Did a great job of holding the ball until the coverage team was basically standing there, twiddling their thumbs, and the punt lands in front of them because they didn't go up to try and receive it. They didn't go up to try and, we're all falling apart here, They didn't try to go up and receive it, and the ball bounces over the top of their heads and into the end zone. That was the one issue, and then the not great punt later on in the game. But overall, Boise State, 1 of 1 on kicking. The offense fails in the red zone, but the kicking game, which is not the case previously, comes through. And how great it is to make a field goal versus Nevada. I'm glad they got that opportunity to do that. one last time and be able to be done with it. So Oscar Doyle, even though he had a bad punt, he also had 42.8 yard average, 2 inside the 20, not bad. And he should have had one down inside the 3-yard line. That's not on him. And then Boise State's coverage unit, they stopped a fake field goal early in the first half. The team was ready to call a timeout when they were out of position for an earlier fake field goal. So they weren't stopped on that. And then they recovered a muff punt in the second half, which ended up being a huge difference in Boise State being able to go out and win this game. So the special teams, not only did they not hurt the team, they didn't do anything in this game to put the team in a backward position or to give Nevada momentum. It's really one of the first times in the last couple of games that they haven't had a momentum-changing play on special teams. That didn't happen today. And they also had a huge play in recovering a muff punt, and then the special teamers, the kicker and the punter, did exactly what they needed to do to give this team what they needed to go out and win. So great performance overall. So overall for the special teams, I'm going to give them a solid A. This was a fantastic job. I've said I don't know if we're going to see a consistent performance for the special teams. We did tonight. Whatever Stacey Collins, if there was, the rest of the coaches may not have been focused on this game, but Stacey Collins was, and he had his unit ready to go. So fantastic job. And we've been critical of Stacey Collins on the show because we're going to address the facts. But at the same time, you also have to address when things go well. And great, fantastic job by Stacey Collins in this one, having his unit prepared and stopping, specifically on that fake field goal attempt, having his defense ready to go, stopped it, and it was not a great play call. It's 4th and 18. It was kind of a BYU-esque moment to go for it in that moment, and they did, but they were stopped because Boise State was ready for the fake field goal. So really, really great performance overall by the special teams. Now that we're talking about special teams, kind of leads me towards the end of this video. Nevada coming down, wiping out Sherrod on a dirty hit. Okay, that happens. But instead of a normal reaction, which is maybe the coach is yelling at the player on the sideline, the player celebrates, runs to the sideline, and is applauded by his teammates on a dirty hit. That's a 15-yard penalty. It was violated the halo rule. I mean, I thought Gilligan was out there for a second with the way that hit went down. If there is anything that you need to know about the Nevada program and its culture, that's it right there. That is a perfect example of the Nevada program, and it's a perfect example of why I don't want to ever play this team again. This game means so much more to Nevada than it does to Boise State. This game doesn't, clearly, by the performance we've shown today, this game means nothing to Boise State. It means nothing to these players. When I have these recruits and I interview them on my channel, most of them were born after or were toddlers during the Kellen Moore days. They don't remember them. That's what their dads talked about. They didn't grow up in that. The Nevada game means nothing to them. And it's not a critique against the players. It's just a fact. I mean, that's 16 years ago, okay? It's 16 years ago. So they were like 5 years old at the oldest. They don't remember the game. It's not part of their culture. It's not part of their mentality. This game just doesn't mean anything to them. And then to the coaching staff, you'd think it means something to them, but the way they prepared for this, it clearly didn't. And so why play this game? Why play this game again? We don't need to. We should be done. We should never play Nevada ever again. This game has always meant more to Nevada than it has to Boise State. They love that moment to be able to see those highlights one more time and remind them of one thing they did in their entire history as a program that meant something. That is why they were ready for this game and Boise State wasn't. So we shouldn't play it ever again. It's not a true rivalry because the Boise State side of things, unless you're my age or older, doesn't care about this game. I care about it. I know a lot of people watching this game do, but most people don't. And the future generation of Boise State fans, they don't and won't. So why play them again? Why give them that opportunity? They are always going to come and give Boise State their best shot. Every team does, but it means something else to Nevada. So why give them that chance? And it kind of comes down to my keys to the game here. My first key was pressure cooker, bring the blitz. Boise State did that, A-. Make the kick, which was to avoid the special teams blunders, which Boise State did, A overall. But my third key was do it for Doug. Do it for Doug. Go out and demolish this team. Go out and do it for one of the greatest of Boise State of all time, whose only loss as a starter was this team. Show that emotion. Come out on this field and do it for Doug. And Boise State did it. They won, but they slept-walked through this game. It clearly meant nothing to them as they played this game. And I don't know how to react to that. I just don't. And so why play this game again? It means nothing. It means nothing. This is not an in-state rivalry. This is not a competitive rivalry. This is not a game that we're going to play them on and off, and they're going to get close enough, and they're going to get chippy enough that our future players are going to develop that hatred. It means nothing. This game, if there was ever an opportunity for this game to mean something to players who haven't been part of the series in the past, this was it. This was the opportunity for them, the coaching staff, to make this a focal point, to do this for the past, in remembrance. Stickers on the back of the helmet. So why play this team again? And so I hope we never play Nevada ever again. There's no reason to do it. Leave them behind the Mountain West. It gives nothing to Boise State, does nothing to elevate this program, Boise State program. Beating Nevada, nobody cares. Losing Nevada, devastating. And they will always be ready to try and do that again. It lifts Nevada up and it gives Boise State nothing. So why play this game? So overall, I'm going to end on a positive. I don't think that this game, these results, in any way reflect what Boise State is capable of doing. I don't think that this game should give you any kind of changed opinions. I know it does, but it shouldn't. Changed opinions about what Max Matz is capable of, what the offensive coordinator staff is capable of, the running back core, the offensive line, even our defense when it comes to tackling. I don't think that this performance should change anything. This was an anomaly where one team cared and when another team didn't. And not just didn't care, but was completely overlooking. That is what this game was. So I don't think this gives you anything that is in any way constructive to be able to look towards the future and say, this gives us something to forecast towards. Because Boise State's going to come out versus Fresno State next week and be a completely different team, unrecognizable from the team we played today, or the team that played on the field today. So the positive of it is, this is done. We don't have to play Nevada ever again. And this team's performance, this game, is gone. Boise State walks away with a win. So at the end of the day, like they say, a win is a win. To a certain extent, they are. They are still undefeated in the Mountain West. They didn't lose to one of the worst teams in the conference this year. They're still undefeated in the Mountain West. Their goals of getting to a Mountain West championship completely in their grasp. So a win is a win. They walked away with it, and they'll be more prepared. If this was ever a wake-up moment, if they needed one, I don't think they did. I don't think that they needed a wake-up moment before they got here. But they weren't going to perform like this versus Fresno State and versus San Diego State and versus Utah State. And, they weren't going to perform like this to any other team. This was just Nevada because they're 1-6 and they thought they could walk through them. Now, maybe they won't overlook if they were ever going to anybody else the rest of the season, so that's good. But this is not reflective in any way of what Boise State is capable of doing or should have done or will do in the future. So, looking forward to next week, Boise State against a team that does have a rivalry element, that has enough of a connection to this current team and the current players and the team. They've played them, and there's a recent history of, and they probably grew up watching those, if they were Boise State fans, watching those Mountain West Championship games versus Fresno State, and they know what this game means. They'll be ready for that one, and I'm excited for it, and I'm actually going to be there. I'm coming up. I wanted to come up over Thanksgiving, not going to be able to do that, so I'm flying up for the Fresno State game. I'm excited to go to the Blue and see Boise State win the way they should have won tonight, but they will do versus the Fresno Bulldogs. So I can't wait. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a completely different team, and I'm ready to see Boise State get back to their winning ways and put this game behind us. We don't ever have to think about it again. As soon as you end this video, that's it. You don't have to think about Nevada. I'll have my highlights come out, so you can watch those if you want to, but you don't ever have to think about them again. And for that, regardless of the results, we should be thankful. And at least we're getting to have this conversation with a win in our belt. So thanks so much for watching. I do apologize for the emotional level that I was today. Certainly not in my most rational, logical, analytical, factual mindset like I usually am. And I'll be back to that next week when we're talking about Fresno State, the game preview and game review. I promise you that. Make sure you grab yourself a bottle of Horseshoe Spirits liquor. Again, you can buy that at any store in the southwest of Idaho, or you can use the website www.horseshoespirits.com, which I'm going to put a link to in the description of this video. Please make sure you check it out. Make sure you subscribe. Give me your thoughts, reactions, and feelings, just like I've shared all of mine. Give me your feelings in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, no matter the results or how they happen, go Big Blue!